Hey everyone, this is Kieran from Keys Minis. I hope you've all had a great Christmas and happy holidays for those that are watching. Today we're painting an Adeptus Sororitas Sisters of Battle, and we're just going to start. It's basically, I've done the red cloth tutorial before, but with Mehipston Red. Thin glaze consistency. I'm going to cover all the cloth areas, which is around, they tend to have these tabards. Under the arms, there's like these cloth patches, and sometimes at the front as well. Thin glaze, probably around 3 or 4 layers again, but it's entirely up to you. You can do 1 or 2 thick coats as well. We'll get the job done. I have, like I said, I've kind of covered this tutorial before, but I wanted to do it for this whole process as well, so you can kind of see some of the blending. I'm going to try and do anyway a little bit on camera. I filmed the whole process for pretty much this video, apart from the kind of whatever she's carrying, the skull relic or whatever it is. I filmed this whole process pretty much, so I'll probably split this into a couple of videos. Now with Rhinox Hide and Mehipston Red in a 50-50 mix, I'm just going to glaze over that area. This is just to kind of darken it a little bit. You can just glaze into the recesses, but I like to put this on here around 2 layers, I think, just to I find that I get better blends. Straight after that, I'm just going to go back with Mehipston Red and just highlight all the areas up. So nice and quick, just work all the areas. You can get really good coverage doing this, and I just find it's easier to get a good coverage first of the shade and then bring it back up and blend it in. But like I said, if you just want to hit the recesses, you're more than welcome to. It's just a method that I prefer, and that's it really. When we're doing all these, it's finding the methods you prefer as a painter to go through. Nobody can tell you the right way, and you've got to figure it out for yourself. Even though some things will help you, like usually shading, going up to the lighter colours tends to be a lot easier than shading down. Now just back with Mehipston Red, I'm just going back over and blocking in some of the higher folds again, just picking it out really, because there's quite a lot of light coverage in this area, so I want to try and mix them. So between both between both the Mehipston Red and that mixture of Mehipston Red and Rhinox Hide, I'm going to go back between both sections of it. So once I'm blocking them out here, I'll also go back with that Mehipston with that mix to then blend the areas in a little bit. I'm working with glazes, so it's mainly I'm working in kind of like you could let it dry. I think here I let most of it dry before I then went in with the darker colour, or I'm actually going in with the darker colour now. Or you could wet blend them together as well. Again, just figure out what plays for you. Take your time as well with this process. If you want to really make these robes really pop, just take your time with those processes of either glazing over the blends, which will take you a little bit longer than kind of wet blending to get that mixture together. But you can work in like stipples as well to really match in them blends with thin glazes, and I quite like figuring out just what's effective for me as a painter as well. Wet blending is great. Obviously wet blend is when you're mixing 2 wet blends of the paint together and kind of blending them. Working with really quick kind of movements and then between the colours, because you kind of got to like blend in the middle and then stretch it back out a little bit at the end. So if I was working on the Mehipston Red, I kind of have to blend in with that mix, and then as I'm stretching it out, it's pulling some of that darker colour into the red, so I'd have to go back to my red quickly and then just kind of another blend. Basically you do little blends across each area. When you're working on small areas like this, like cloths and folds, I tend to rely more on the glaze blends, maybe a little bit of the wet blends right as it meets, but not drawing the the paint too much in. The glaze blend tends to be a little bit more accurate, but like I said, it's more time consuming, so you've got to figure out what works for you. I've tried to show this process as much as possible on this video, and this next few minutes is just, next 4 or 5 minutes really, is me just working the process between each one. Again, these are kind of really good models to try it on, because they're not as big as a kind of a Space Marine. Space Marine's tabards are probably roughly something bigger, but in general they're not as big as something chunky like that. They've got nice small folds, you can play around with little blends and textures, and yeah, I kind of like the Sisters of Battle for that. I painted one a year ago and she wasn't as good as what I've managed to do this one. But yeah, just take your time. I have a previous tutorial, it's a little quicker, it's less of the blending stages. You're more than welcome to go back and check that out, but I wanted to show it again with some of the blends that I kind of do now, with obviously glazing, a little bit of wet blend. You can see I've gone back to that darker consistency, and now I'm kind of wet blending the glazes together. Like I said, now I've got to go back and do some more with Mehipston, kind of pull it back out a little bit. It takes a little bit more time, but either wet blending or glazing can take time. It's just, you have to put the time in to really get that finish you want. Again, this is not competition standard painting that I'm doing, but I kind of wanted to get her up to a decent tabletop standard, really high-end tabletop standard, because that's just kind of what pleases me as a painter. I really want to work. I find that if I'm working to those levels each miniature, I'm then pushing myself to get better. Now, in each stage of this kind of paint job, you're going to see like different areas where the paint's going to be different, where the model's in different stages, because I'm trying to split it down into sections. So I'm focusing on the red cloth right now, and then obviously you can see the skin, but I'm going to focus on the skin afterwards, and then that. So with Rhinox Hide now, very thin glaze, and I'm just going to go right in those deeper recesses of the folds. I'm not going to really stretch it out too much. I'm using a thicker brush than what I probably should have here, but that's kind of just learning, or not necessarily a thicker brush. I haven't got the point on this brush as much as I probably should have, but which just takes then a little bit more time to just rework and just tidy up areas. But right in the recesses, because I think it adds a nice deep contrast when you've got that really harsh shadow of or that deep shadow of the brown, and then once you start to mix up into some of the lighter colours, you've just got that. If you make a mistake like I did there, you can see I'm wearing gloves mainly. Didn't have one on my right hand for this particular thing, but I tend to wear gloves because it's just a little bit, you're not rubbing paint off as much, especially if you don't varnish. I don't really varnish my models as much, but obviously if you're using your finger, the oils can rub off some of the paints, especially certainly with resin models, so you just got to be a little bit careful on that instance. Certainly on corners you can catch certainly on corners you can catch the paint job a little bit easier. But yeah, just working, there's lots of little folds. I also worked in kind of, there's like these buttonholes as well. I don't know if I showed it on camera, but I worked also a bit of the brown into those. So next, with Evil Sunz Scarlet, you could mix between Mehipston and Evil Sunz Scarlet and then create a further transition. I went straight in and then tried to blend the transitions in together. But if you're looking for a bit more speed, have a mix and then work a thicker highlight layer. So now I'm just really focusing on like the folds and not really going into the kind of, once the fold kind of I don't know where it, but as it blends more into, as it goes from the fold and then goes into a recess, I'm just really focusing on the top areas. I'm still working fairly thick because I'm going to go back with another colour just to add a little bit more texture later on. But all around the edges as well, I find you get a nice contrast if you work around the edge of the cloak and robes as well. It's all visual. You've got to find what And even miniature paintings, that thing, it's all subjective, so you've got to find how you might like something. Someone else might not like it, but that's fine. It's what you like as a painter. That's essentially the main thing. It doesn't matter what other people think. You've got to just go back, find what works for you, and if you like it, that's fine. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, that's fine. I believe that's my true opinion, and there's always going to be people that appreciate what you do. I certainly appreciate other painters because you can see the level that they've just had to try to get there. So with Mehipston Scarlet, I went back and then I just also did some scratches on the raised areas of the cloth as well. And now using a mixture of Wild Rider Red and Mehipston Scarlet, I'm going to just finally highlight those scratches, and you can just work nice and thin across previous scratches and just create some texture. I covered this more in depth on my leather tutorial a couple of videos back. I'll add it as a card on top so you can go check that out, where I worked from a thicker layer first. But just nice and just work the points. You could add some of the scratches and pull them right into the darker shades as well of where the folds are. It just makes it pop a little bit more. Just take your time. With scratches, you can work some stipples into it as well, some dots, so it looks like it's a little bit more ragged and leathered tone. So it's just kind of a red cloth I was going with, not necessarily leather, but I just find it adds a lot more texture to the model doing it this way. So yeah, work on a hedge highlight around the bottom of the cloth and any of the kind of edges of the cloth, so like the ends of the cloth as well. It just adds some nice texture to it. Take your time. There's no rush with this bit. Just I'm using kind of glazes again, so but to do that you've got to like wipe quite a lot of the excess paint off, either on your foam paper towel, just to have a bit more control when you're using those glaze consistencies. If you want to use a thicker layer of paint, it's a lot easier, but you just kind of leave too much texture on the raised areas. So yep, take your time, and now we're going to move on to working on the flesh as well. In this model, in this particular video, I'm going to try and just break it down to the robes and the flesh. That is it. And then in the next one I'll do the air and the black armour. So again, using a glaze consistency, Kislev Flesh, just working all over the face. Took me roughly around 5 probably coverages over the black, and I used a bit of medium in, because obviously if I mix a little bit of medium into it, I just find that you get a smoother finish with lighter colours like whites, bones, and lighter skin tones like Kislev Flesh, Pallid Witch Flesh, and those kind of things. You can just get a smoother finish overall. They can be quite chalky sometimes when you're working it, especially in glaze consistencies. They can kind of settle and dry kind of a little bit chalky, so that's why I'm using some contrast medium as well. Obviously just wipe any excess off on a full mouth paper towel. Again, you get better control. So now I'm using some Cadian Fleshtone, and all of this is just to, as you can see, because this is probably the second layer I've done, it just adds a bit more warmth back to the face. So again, nice thin glaze, just work all the areas on this bit. Now using Bloodreaver Flesh and Cadian Fleshtone, I'm just going to work in the shadows, so around the nose, under the eyes, and a little bit under the cheekbones, but not so heavy, because certainly on Sisters of Battle they don't have as many poignant shadowy areas of the skin of the flesh, so I don't want to overdo it. I kind of want to keep a softer looking face than what I would with kind of a Space Marine. I want it to look a little bit softer. Under the nose as well, just right under the nose, you can hit that area and get a bit of shadow cover, and a thin line under the lips. Using Khorne Red, now I'm just covering the lips and the tongue, just of the mouth, because she's got an open mouth. I also added in some Kislev Flesh at one point, but I didn't capture it right on camera. As you can see, it's gone blurry on this bit. But just to highlight it up, I went in with a mixture of, like, I think it was 70-30 Kislev Flesh to Khorne Red to Kislev Flesh, and I just highlighted the tongue. I also did a bit with Khorne Red. I did just on top of the cheekbone as well. She's got a eye monocle, sighting monocle, but just on the top cheekbone I did a little bit, just to add a bit more colour in. Now going back with Kislev Flesh, I'm just going to really just go back out across the higher points, so the cheekbones, the nose, kind of sides on the nostrils, the chin, the upper lip, and yeah, just going to cover those areas and bring them back up to point. Using white, any white you want. I'm using Vallejo white, I just prefer it to Games Workshop. I'm just going to focus on the eyeball, and just take my time using a good point of a brush, and just draw across the eye. I go over the area quite a few times just to make sure I've covered it. As you can see, you may need to just take your time with this. I didn't catch the point, but I went back in with some Abaddon Black just to add an iris. And now using Ushanti Bone and Kislev Flesh, this is my final layer, and I'm just going to go touch really sharp points, the cheekbones, the nose, again top of the lip, and just final little point highlights. Again, I'm probably just a little bit above glaze consistency, a little bit more, just for a highlight layer, but really thin down paint again. Wipe your brush off on your cloth excess. So that's it for this one. In the next one, I'm hopefully going to release it on Sunday. I'm going to cover the black armour, the hair, maybe the gun, and the black leather and gold, and just the final details. I've got a Patreon, you can go check that out, but it's not from January. After this series is done, these next couple of videos of this Sister of Battle, I'm going to start releasing the videos 2 days prior onto that, but that'll be from after this series. I want this series to get out first. I hope you had a great Christmas, and happy holidays everyone, and please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you on Sunday with the second part, third part. There might be a third part as well, but yeah, thanks for watching.